Welcome to the future of payroll and workforce management insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com where I am your host. My name is Brent Skinner. I do all sorts of things here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation with my guest today, Abby. Welcome, Abby, to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Brent. Look forward to speaking with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should tell our audience that you are Abby Thompson. You're Practice Group Vice President at Robert Half. And we have a really interesting topic today. The working title is The Trust Factor, How Your Hiring Process Shapes Talent Outcomes. There's a lot to talk about in this subject area, and we're going to get to it. What I like to ask all my guests, though, at the outset of the podcast is, what got you into this line of work, into the world of work? There's a lot of passion in this space. People are on a mission in this space to make work better. What galvanizes you? What gets you going every day in the world of work, Abby?
Yeah, it's funny, I've worked in the staffing industry now a little over 13 years. And, if you would have asked me when I went to college if I would be working in the staffing industry, I wouldn't have said no. I always wanted to do sales. So, funny enough, I didn't even know what a staffing firm was when I was graduating from college. And a number of them were reaching out to me potentially to work for them. And I didn't go that path. I actually did inside sales for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then I did outside sales for the Hershey Company. And ultimately, I really wanted to get back into an office, and I didn't know kind of what I wanted to do next. And one of my friends was recently placed by Robert Half, and she was like, well, you should reach out to them, see if they can help you. And I was like, well, I think they place finance and accounting professionals. I don't know that that's going to be me. So I reached out to them, and they were actually thinking about me for a recruiter. So I started, in the Oklahoma City market, and I just realized, I loved interacting with people. I wanted to kind of be back with a team, less in that outside sales environment, but you still get that with being client facing. And so, the rest is kind of just history. Within a year of being in the Oklahoma City market, I was promoted and moved down to the Dallas market, where I ran kind of my finance and accounting desk for most of my career until in 2020 I got to join um, the team I'm on now, where we used to travel around actually Monday through Thursday, and I would get to hear kind of everything that was going on in the different offices and different markets. And now most of that I do virtually, but it is kind of a mix of that in person. And then I get to kind of partner with some of our vendors like yourself. So, ultimately, I really love sharing insights and helping people and navigating kind of those tough conversations, because changing jobs is stressful. It's not something you do every day. It's kind of like, buying a house or moving or getting married, having a baby. And so if you're talking about it every day, it's second nature for me, whereas it's maybe not second nature for those that we help.
Yeah. Uh, Really interesting too that you mentioned that you didn't really know what a recruiting firm was at first when you when you uh kind of fell into this a little bit, right? And that story is similar to we have a lot of payroll professionals on the podcast, and a recurring theme is that nobody really kind of chooses payroll. They kind of fall into it, this sort of thing. And even I myself, I've been in this space about 20 years, and when I first started, I didn't realize it was this long until I looked back. I would have about 3 years into it, I realized it was called HCM. Let's just put it that way. And so, it's kind of interesting how that goes. Let's get into the topic. So, you know, the hiring process, it's like way more than a transactional sort of, process these days, right? It's sort of a defining moment for all sorts of things. There's all sorts of stuff going on, but it's a defining moment for employer trust. And I know there are multiple sort of candidate experience studies that show roughly three-quarters or more of candidates view the hiring process of a reflection as a reflection of how employees will be treated. Hey, first impressions count the most. You can't change a first impression, these sorts of things. And and we're going to talk about this today because it's a real opportunity. It's a danger and an opportunity for organizations. So I guess my first question for you is, why is the new hire experience, especially the early onboarding phase, so influential? Why is it so influential in shaping how new employees perceive an organization? I mean, it's kind of, it's intuitive on one level, but when you really analyze it, it gets a little bit complex. Maybe you can break it down for us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, just as you mentioned, first impressions are everything. So it starts a little bit too in the interview process. How organized was that? How quickly did they move? And then if you're onboarding someone and you're suddenly not having that communication, fear and doubt starts to set in. You're going to this new place, maybe kind of how to do the job because you're technically in that profession, but, it's kinda like driving a car. You know how to drive a car, but if you get in someone else's car, it's completely different. You're a little uncomfortable, and, a lot of times if those expectations aren't set early on, or if the manager doesn't kind of give them enough attention for that feedback, and dynamic kind of dialogue to happen, then they start realizing, well, maybe I didn't make the right decision. And that directly is going to correlate to the retention. People don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Yeah, yeah, we hear that a lot too. W- And it's true. One thing that strikes me here is, you know, if the like the recruiting process is very engaging and it feels very, high touch and there's much engagement, right? But then there's a big sort of contrast with the onboarding process, which may feel, there's a juxtaposition there, a big contrast. Uh, how can organizations kind of mitigate the risk of that happening? I'll just share a little bit of an insight that came to me while you were mentioning all that is, I often hear folks really talking about, talent acquisition as a completely different bucket than the HR process, right? And to me, it seems like there ought to be a lot of collaboration there, so that there's a seamless sort of a continuity of culture from the recruiting process all the way through the first day of work and to the first paycheck and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you look at it, you're absolutely right. HR and payroll are getting merged together because if you look at it, a lot of the human capital management systems integrate, applicant tracking along with payroll and onboarding. So, from that perspective, they all need to communicate and be on the same page. And in some cases, the HR function may be so automated that, they want a payroll person to almost do that HR function. So that's kind of a blended skill set that's a little bit hard to find. But, payroll is already tedious and pretty complex, and you've got to do a lot of checks and balances, even if you have an automated AI system. So to have someone do that in addition to on HR, in addition to talent acquisition, if you think about the people that do talent acquisition, they talk to people all day. People that are doing payroll, they're entering data all day, not necessarily talking to as many people. And so those two skill sets, if you're expecting all of that from one person, you're setting yourself up for failure. So you've got to kind of have a good system where HR, payroll, and talent acquisition all operate together, and then have the people in the strengths of the roles that they best serve to really be effective. And I think too,
Um,
that's where, oh, sorry. I was going to say, and two, that's where
no, go ahead.
the place where talent acquisition has to follow up every time the automation goes out from payroll.
Yeah, yeah. This might be a good a good segue to the technology piece of it, and I also want to get back to what exactly establishing trust during the hiring process looks like, right? We talk a little bit more about that, but first, what role should automation and AI like? How should they factor into onboarding without eroding human trust that the brand new employees expect? Like, how can you kind of blend this to because onboarding is a very it can be a highly administrative process, right? And it can be there's a real sort of temptation, a good one to automate a lot of it, but how do you retain that human factor?
Yeah, so I mean, I think from what you can automate, like, pre day one paperwork, scheduling, system access, and some of like the personalized learning paths. But, where you've got to have those touch points are, if someone's accepting an offer, they want to connect directly with a manager so they can talk about, when they're going to start, what's the dress code, answer any of those last minute questions. And then, when you're thinking about when someone starts, what AI can't do, it can't necessarily give the employee feedback on how are they doing. Are they on par with their peers? If they have maybe questions that aren't covered in the training manual. So that's where, if it's too automated, it could be kind of like going to an airport and seeing a kiosk where you need to scan kind of your boarding pass and your ID, but it's not working. But there's not a person in sight that you can find to help you. And then you're wondering, like, is there even a plane and who's going to drive that?
So what does trust though? Like what are some of the factors of trust when it comes to the hiring process and onboarding? Like what how can employers really show that they're trustworthy?
Yeah, I think some of it you can have different employees that you've, either had on your team for a long time speak to the culture and the management style. You can also have someone speak to their onboarding experience that's maybe within their first year. So that's a demonstrated ability that they have a process that works and they're hands on. And then, I think the second piece is it's actually getting into the details and expectations of what someone's supposed to do the first 30, 60, and 90 days. So they know what good looks like because then they know that they're signing up for the job that they're actually starting. And then the last piece is just, I think you can use again automation for some of those triggers to remind you, okay, I need to have a 30-day check in, I need to have a 60-day check in, and maybe there's a form that you fill out. But if that goes with like, if your manager's not sitting down with you to talk through it, you're kind of wondering, like, am I just doing this for compliance? Is anybody reading this? Or is it actually something I should fill out?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, to have that mentor, that person to be there almost like your concierge through the your first days and weeks on the job. Yeah. Um what do you think in the couple minutes that we have left here, Abby, what do you think is in store for the hiring process for onboarding when it comes to all of these factors? Like where is it going? How is it going to look different? How can employers reinforce and amplify trust?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the biggest piece is just a human element involved in the process. And then, like, eliminating automatic, rejections or automated tasks without that review of knowing, like, is this the right time? Have we reviewed the applicant? Because I think with the human in the loop, then you're making sure that you're not missing potential candidates, as well as you're making sure the right information is going to the right people from an onboarding perspective. A management consulting firm recently did a case study and it mentioned only 1% of companies are AI mature. So we have a
1%?
long 1%. Because
Oh,
they're using AI, but it's the balance of how much do we leverage AI and then how much do we have to have the human interaction. So there's tons of things that we can automate because different people all have different learning styles. Some need to read, some need to be shown. Some need kind of that hands-on, like walk through it together. And so if you're offering all three of those types of onboarding, then your employees typically going to learn and feel confident that they know what they're doing. But right now, I think just in the world of we're trying to automate as much as we can, everyone's jobs are a little bit busy and the manager's busy. They're having challenges navigating what do I do with the automation, not rely on the automation only.
I what does it mean to be an AI mature organization? What does that mean?
So, in the article that I'm referencing, it was about just how the leaders are leveraging AI. So again, if a task is automated and someone's doing all of their onboarding, through a learning platform, but there's no human connection, they don't feel like a person. They don't feel like an employee. They feel like a number, and it feels very impersonal. So it's like I'm here and, but physically, they're probably gonna be at the job a lot longer than they would be emotionally.
Yeah, and you want them there emotionally. You want them to have sort of an emotional investment in their work as opposed to being checked out. There's so much in here that's it just helping to ensure that the length of a person's stay at your organization, promoting retention, promoting their engagement and thus their productivity, all sorts of things. It really does. All trace back to that hiring experience in those first days on the job. And I want to thank you so much, Abby, for joining us for this episode of the podcast. This has been a really illuminating conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me again.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.